What is going on, everybody? What is going on? The Catch Fam, my name is John Dawson, and in today's video, we will be hopping into a 8-team full PPR mock draft for the 2023 fantasy football season. Today's format will be one quarterback, two running backs, two wide receivers, a tight end spot, one flex spot, kicker and defense, and 5 bench spots. If you guys do play in a double flex format, don't worry, I'll be going over how to kind of evaluate today's draft from a double flex perspective. If you guys are looking for different draft positions, more teams, 10 teams, 12 teams, guys, check out all the videos we have on the channel, all the live streams we've done so far this offseason. I have a ton of different draft positions, a ton of different formats. You guys might find what you're looking for. Outside of that, if you guys are new to the channel, I do kindly ask that you guys subscribe on the way in if you find today's video helpful. Be sure to hit the like button on the way in as well. But most importantly, if you guys have any comments, questions, concerns pertaining to the 2023 fantasy football season, be sure to drop them down below and I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. So without further ado, let's not waste any more time. Let's hop into today's mock draft. All right, so for the purpose of today's video, I'm drafting from the 1.1. Yeah, there's some debate that you could have right here, but for me, don't overthink it. Take Justin Jefferson. Take the best player in the draft off the board, the safest player in the draft, in my opinion, off the board. Like, sure, some people might argue like Jamar Chase linked to Joe Burrow, better connection, C-Mac, Bijan. There are other names that might come up. Sometimes in an 18 format, you might hear Travis Kelce because of the huge positional advantage that you would get. I think all of that's just fine, but for me, Justin Jefferson, take him off the board, don't overthink it, and just move right along. So how does that impact the rest of our draft? Well, you know, when you're drafting in an 18 format, I say it 100 times when I do these videos for you guys, positional advantage is so massive. And right now, obviously, we have a little bit at the wide receiver position, but we want to continue building that positional advantage at wide receiver. So at the 2.8, 3.11, we're probably just going to take the best available wide receivers. So if you play in a single flex format, what's that going to do for you? You're going to lock in a stud wide receiver 2. You're going to lock in a stud flex option as well. If you play in a double flex format, well, then you've knocked out those, and then you're just looking for that fourth flex player throughout your draft. In full PPR, guys, I'm always looking to fill those flex spots with the wide receiver position because they bring more value in full PPR, in my opinion. But nonetheless, it's just going to depend on who's available there, and I'm never against going quarterback early in 18 formats. But at the same time, we're probably going to be able to sit back and still get a good value at like the 4.8, 5.1 if we want. So for me, go with the best available wide receivers. It would have been great if Garrett Wilson fell here, but it's just not going to happen. And I don't mind, you know, if Amon-Ra St. Brown fell here as well. But let's take Devontae Adams. Just not overthink it. Jimmy G, Raiders offense might not be great. That's fine. You can go Jalen Waddle here. I like Chris Olave. I think those guys are perfectly fine. And I'm a really big fan of Waddle, who was a wide receiver 7 last year. But for the sake of today's mock draft, let's go Devonta Smith, who I also really like in this range. Your wide receiver 10 last year. Any of those guys are fine. Okay. Waddle, Olave, Smith, maybe even Calvin Ridley, maybe even T. Higgins in that range. But now what we've done is we're stacked up at wide receiver. So we have positional advantage. We might not have the best RB1 in the league, okay? We might not have Travis Kelce. But right now, on a weekly basis, barring any injury, we have a huge positional advantage at wide receiver. So that gives us an advantage. And sometimes when we're drafting from the 1.1, there were good running backs right there. Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard. We could have taken a quarterback and started with Mahomes or Allen or Hurts and gotten positional advantage right there. But I will say from the 1.1, you might kind of find that you have a little bit of a disadvantage just overall in the drafts I've seen in different formats, even 10 teams and 12 teams. It just feels like, the value you get at the end of the second, beginning of the third, compared to what you could get at the beginning of the second, middle of the second, it's just completely different. And then a lot of times the value at the beginning of the third isn't that far off from the value at the end of the third, even sometimes beginning of the fourth round. So I don't say you're at a complete disadvantage, but you might as well just go ahead, I think, and load up at wide receiver. Now, if the right running back was available there, like if for some reason Barkley or Chubb made it there, I don't think you pass on them. Like I said, I mean, Henry, Jacobs, JT, there were good names there. But nonetheless, I say we stack up at wide receiver. And if you play in a double flex format, I think it's okay to go with another wide receiver here at the 4.851. But ultimately, I don't quite think we'll need to. I still think guys like Christian Kirk, Brandon Ayuk can easily fall out to a little bit later rounds. So, what are we going to do with the 4.8 and the 5.1? Well, I do think we need to get a running back on this team, but also, I mean, if Mahomes is available in an 8-team format, I'm just not passing on Mahomes, in the fourth round, fifth round. Like, those are the rounds, right, for me. If you're not going to go quarterback in the first 3 rounds and you're in, there goes Josh Allen and there goes Mahomes. But yeah, if we're sitting here and it's the 4.8 and I wasn't even planning on going quarterback and Mahomes, Allen, or Hurts are there, really at pretty much at any point in the fourth or fifth round, if those 3 guys are there, I say you have to take them. But they get selected right on cue. So what do we want to do here? T. Higgins is a really good value. I'll say that much. But let's go back to back running backs, okay? Let's go Najee Harris and let's go Kenneth Walker. Let's get our running backs, RB1, RB2 out of the way. And, I kind of alluded to it earlier. Like, yeah, we don't have the best positional advantage at running back. We don't have the best running backs in this draft. But I think we get some consistency here. Najee, some people still view him as the worst running back in the entire NFL after he went from the RB3 in fantasy to the RB14 in fantasy last year. But, he just had a big drop off in the receiving game. Uh, over 1,000 rushing yards last year, 7 rushing touchdowns, 1,200 rushing yards in his rookie season, 7 rushing touchdowns in his rookie season. Not that far apart. About 40 less carries. So, yeah, that could be maybe concerning, but he was still pretty dang efficient on his 272 rushing attempts with 3.82 yards per carry compared to his 3.91 yards per carry in his rookie season. Not that far off. The big drop off, because he still had 3 receiving touchdowns last year, which is the same number that he had in his rookie season, was the amount of targets and receptions going from Big Ben to Kenny Pickett, right? 94 targets in his rookie season, 53 last year, 74 receptions compared to 41 last year, 467 receiving yards compared to 229 receiving yards. So that drop off's not great. And, I know a lot of you guys out there like Jaylen Warren, and I do think Jaylen Warren is a good running back and could get some receiving work, maybe even some general touches on this offense as well. But I still think Najee is a model consistency. You know what you're going to expect. The ceiling's not super high, right? But when you look at last year, Najee gave you double digits in full PPR every game but 3, and he missed 1 game by 0.1 points. So 9.9 points in week 10. The ceiling, not very high, I get it, but at least you know what you're going to get on a weekly basis. So do I love him as an RB1? No. But is he okay? Yes. Kenneth Walker, on the other hand, I'm still a fan of Walker. Groin injury popped up this offseason. Zach Charbonnet added to the squad. JSN added to the squad. They could throw more. Charbs could get touches. I get it. Walker's going to be okay. Charbs is mainly going to be used as a receiving back. Every now and then he might, vulture some goal line work. But Walker, at his value, still has the potential to finish as a top 10 back if he's fully healthy, and you just have to take that risk. All right. What are we going to do next? There's some really good quarterbacks on the board, so we're going to take one. Probably Justin Fields, just to get that upside. There's some good running backs available. I kind of like Breece Hall in this range. Call me crazy. But we're going to take a wide receiver nonetheless. So give me Fields. And then, Christian Watson, Brandon Ayuk, whoever you prefer. Christian Kirk. Deebo Samuel still available. A lot of really good names. But I'm going to go Christian Watson because I want a little bit of upside sprinkled in here. I love Ayuk. I love Christian Kirk. I don't care if you want to go with those guys. I don't mind Deebo whatsoever. I think he's a good value here. But I want pure upside right now. I think we have a lot of consistency between J.J. Adams and Smith and some pretty high ceilings involved with those guys, but ultimately I want a little boom or bust. I want to sprinkle upside. Give me Christian Watson. He's going to bring that to the table this year. Him and Jordan Love have looked good as a duo throughout the offseason. Love's just looked good in general, right? And then we get the upside in Fields in terms of rushing capability, and I do think he's going to improve as a passer this year as well. So that kind of locks in our starting roster outside of the tight end position, which we'll talk about in a second here. But Justin Fields, Najee Harris, Kenneth Walker, J.J. Adams, Devonta Smith, Christian Watson on the bench. If you're playing a double flex format, Christian Watson's in your second flex. But talk about this all the time, guys. Full PPR formats. Even if you only play in a single flex format, it's really important to lock in that wide receiver 4 as a wide receiver that you have confidence in case, bye weeks and injuries start popping up, right? Because you want in full PPR a wide receiver of true value who you can plug in as your wide receiver 1, 2, or flex option throughout the entire year. Plain and simple. So for me, filling in Watson as that bench player who can, fill in, give us some upside before drafting a third running back, before drafting a tight end is important to me. Okay. What do we want to do next? And what do we want to do about the tight end position? Well, I was about to say, if Hawkinson or Kittle are still available, I'd probably go with one of them. But let's take some running backs off of the board. Let's take DeAndre Swift. We'll talk about why in a second here. Oh, man. There are some really good wide receivers available, too. So it's tough. I'm going to go running back here and see what happens. Okay, I'm going to go Rachaad White. So now we secure 2 running backs who just bring pure pass catching upside in Swift and Rachaad White. Okay, both these guys are in a position where they are going to be the running backs on their respective teams who are going to catch the football. That's why I like both of them. Okay, a little bit of risk involved here. Swift, injuries, crowded offense. I get it. I've talked about DeAndre Swift so much since he got traded to the Eagles. I'm just going to leave it at the fact that I believe the Eagles are going to be able to utilize DeAndre Swift's talent to its maximum capability. Okay, I think Swift's going to have a good year in full PPR for a lot of different reasons. Rachaad White, I have started to become a little bit more concerned because their center, Ryan Jensen, is now out for the entire season. And the offensive line does look weak. And I get it, Baker's a quarterback. Like, not a lot of people are excited about this offense. But for me, 50 receptions as a rookie with Leonard Fournette as RB1 for the first half of the season. Rachaad White, Baker is going to dump the football off to him a ton. He led the league last year at the quarterback position in dump off passes. I just love everything. In terms of PPR upside for Rachaad White going into this season, Sean Tucker's there, but, I really believe that at the end of the day, Rachaad White's going to have a solid role. Okay, if I was going to go wide receiver at the 8.8 or 9.1, it's Jahan Dotson. I like Mike Williams. I like Chris Godwin in that range as well, but Jahan Dotson was a guy who made me really consider not going running back right there. And nonetheless, to wrap up this draft, before we go kicker and defense, we're just going to take 2 wide receivers off of the board. So give me Hollywood Brown. And then, I like Jordan Addison here. Sky Moore is interesting. JSN's probably okay. And you could, go 5 running backs, 5 wide receivers, take another running back. Especially with this build, if you don't have the most confidence, you could go Antonio Gibson or A.J. Dillon. But I think you go wide receiver. And I'm just going to go Mike Evans because I think he's a pretty decent value here. But any of those guys are fine. Jordan Addison, JSN, Quentin Johnston even, get a rookie, get some upside. Cortland Sutton, Sky Moore are fine. But I think, Mike Evans, this is kind of a veteran-esque team to a degree. At wide receiver, I guess, I don't know, maybe not too much, but with JJ, Adams, and now Evans, it's a pretty good mix. Smith, Watson, Hollywood Brown in there too. So ultimately, he's just a good value there. And once again, talking about the Buccaneers offense, and maybe a good point here with us taking Hollywood Brown on the Cardinals offense. I say it all the time. Bad offenses still produce productive fantasy players. Not every team has to be the Eagles or the Bills or the Chiefs or Bengals or whatever at the end of the day, there's still going to be targets, receptions for players on bad offenses and, even just bad teams that have bad defenses. We all know that that means that those teams are going to be playing from behind more and needing to throw the football more. So, Hollywood Brown, I do think is a really good value overall because I think at some point this season, Kyler is going to come back. I know there's like a big kind of argument on that if that's going to happen or not, but if Kyler's there, for the second half of the season, or if he sits out the first 4 games or first 6 games, once he's back, him and Hollywood are going to bring back that chemistry. I mean, Hollywood Brown last year, before he got hurt, 11 or more fantasy points in every single game through the first 6 weeks, a ceiling of 28 points, 20 or more fantasy points in those 3 games. So ultimately, I still like him at where he's going. And, he got banged up, right? And even when he came back, he was still playing pretty decently. But then, yeah, Kyler went down and it got pretty ugly pretty quickly. But I just think he's a good value. Then Mike Evans, at the end of the day, he's the red zone target here. I prefer Chris Godwin, who actually had a really underrated season last year in full PPR. I get it, guys. Tom Brady's not throwing the football anymore, but there's still value to Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, especially in full PPR. Okay, one point I do want to make is we went Justin Fields in the 6th round, and I see this a lot in 8-team formats. It might not happen in your home league, and sometimes there's someone in your league who says, I'm going to take 2 quarterbacks. We see that happen sometimes in the mocks. Someone gets Mahomes early, then gets Trevor Lawrence late because why not? But right now, Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert are still on the board. And we still need to draft a tight end as well. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's just go Evan Ingram. We still got a good value there. But yeah, going back to the point on quarterback. Let me pick we'll just go with let's go with the Jets defense. But going back to the point on quarterback, it is now the 13th round in the draft, and Justin Herbert just got selected to the team that got Mahomes. And I like that because, yes, you can sit back and take the risk and say, hey, there's, including my team, now there's only 3 teams that need a quarterback. I kind of love the first 7 quarterbacks that are ranked. And I think, maybe there's a top tier of Allen, Mahomes, Hurts, and then a next tier, Jackson, Burrow, Fields, Herbert, and T-Law. But I can sit back and still keep stacking up at skill position guys and kind of draft a quarterback of equal value whenever I want. But then you hold the risk of what if someone does draft 2 quarterbacks and now only Trevor Lawrence is on the board. So one of these teams without a quarterback is going to take Trevor Lawrence. And I do think there's 2 points here. The first point is there's a good amount of risk because in real drafts, it happens all the time. Because what does that do if you draft Jalen Hurts and Trevor Lawrence? Well, you take away that positional advantage on a weekly basis from at least one team out there. And then on your bye week, you have an absolute stud quarterback. And or if an injury occurs, you have a backup quarterback who's really good. So you can see that happen, but sometimes that risk really pays off. Because you look at Team 6 here, they just got a stud quarterback who can absolutely easily finish as a top 5 quarterback this season in the 14th round after stacking up everywhere else, including kicker and defense. So, I say go get the value when it's there. But man, you might not have to. It depends. All right, so let's take a look at the team and then we'll wrap up today's video. Justin Fields at quarterback, Evan Ingram at tight end. We did hold off at tight end. And I didn't really get to touch on that in today's video. But for me, if you don't get Kelsey in the first, if you don't go Andrews at a good value, then just hold off at tight end. There's a little bit more depth at tight end, so those problems we just talked about with the quarterback position don't typically occur at tight end. Ingram, Freiermuth, Njoku, Cole Kmet, maybe Dalton Kincaid, somebody's going to be there. Less positional advantage, but you look at the point differential between like tight end 4 and 5 last year to tight end like 12 to 14. It really wasn't that different. So, yes, Kelsey, Andrews, Hawkinson, those guys made a big difference. Kittle down the stretch, but man, a lot of the value towards the end of your draft, just hold off, get a guy like Ingram or Freiermuth. Okay. Najee Harris, Kenneth Walker, DeAndre Swift, Rashad White at running back. So we kind of sacrificed some running back value for that upside, that positional advantage at wide receiver with J.J. Adams, Devonta Smith, Christian Watson, Hollywood Brown, and Mike Evans. Jets defense and Jason Myers at kicker. So our starting roster would be Fields, Ingram, Najee Harris, Kenneth Walker, J.J. Adams, and flexing Devonta Smith. That would leave Christian Watson, DeAndre Swift, Rashad White, Hollywood Brown, and Mike Evans on the bench. If we play in a double flex format, then we're flexing Christian Watson. Great defense, great kicker. Still love this team. Guys, I have a ton of different strategies for 8-team formats out on the channel. Make sure you guys go through the videos down below if you want to check out some different draft positions, some different draft strategies. But for today's video, we went heavy at wide receiver to start, and I think a good team overall. If you guys have any questions for the upcoming fantasy season, please let me know in the comments down below. I will get back to you as soon as I can. If you guys are looking for different formats, different draft positions, like I said, we have a ton of mock drafts out on the channel throughout the entire off seasons, live streams, as well as pre-recorded videos like this one. So be sure to go and check those out. You guys might find what you're looking for. Guys, if you found today's video helpful, enjoyable, whatever it may be, make sure to subscribe, hit the like on the way out. And other than that, that's going to do it for today. So with that, I will say thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. And remember, you saw it here on The Catch.